Good evening and welcome to the Border Zone project. We keep on following developments between Armenia and Azerbaijan and war in Karabakh. Today we will discuss the OSCE Minsk group format. My special guest is Ambassador of the United States who previously served as U.S. co-chair in the OSCE Minsk group, Ambassador Yanom Kelli. Ambassador Kelli, welcome to the Border Zone.
Thank you, Yegor. Very pleased to be here.
Thank you. You were a co-chair on behalf of the United States in the OSCE Minsk group format. Could you please tell me, do you agree that we can say already that Minsk group format failed and some new mechanism should be developed?
I don't know if we need a new method or a new structure. I think that it's a good structure right now with the U.S., France, and Russia. It's a good structure in theory, and I think that the Minsk group has come up with some good ideas for a path towards a solution. The so-called they're called the Madrid principles, which basically is it's basically an exchange of territories. So Armenia would give back the territories that it now occupies around Nagorno-Karabakh, and in return, the Azeris would agree to some security guarantees for the territories. But I think the biggest issue is the Madrid principle, which says that both sides agree to a referendum on the future status of Nagorno-Karabakh. And that's the point, I think, where the Azeris have not been able to sign on to it. The Armenians, publicly don't want to give up those territories. The 7 territories that are in non-disputed Azerbaijani territory around Nagorno-Karabakh, but their main goal is allowing self-determination for Nagorno-Karabakh. But that's something the Azeris, of course, aren't willing to concede either, and so you get at the heart of the real conflict here, which is the very maximalist positions of both sides, and that's the kind of situation where you cannot really have any kind of resolution when both sides refuse to make any kind of compromises. And the Minsk group, the co-chairs, I think, have worked very hard to bring the sides together. I think that's had value. I was the interim co-chair for about 9 months, and in that time we had about, I think, 4 meetings of the 2 foreign ministers. One in my house in Vienna, when I was ambassador to the OSCE. So that has some value, but the Minsk group, I think, has a great roadmap for peace and the Madrid principles. If you're going to fault the Minsk group, I think you have to fault it for the lack of high-level attention, regrettably, especially on the American side.
Could you please tell me, if the Minsk group format is fine and 2 sides cannot find any, resolution or compromise, do you see any way out? Do you see any role of the United States now to resolve or at least stop fire?
I think it'll be very difficult to have a lasting ceasefire. It seems to me that Baku has made some sort of strategic decision to try and take back as much of the territories around Nagorno-Karabakh, the undisputed 7 districts around Nagorno-Karabakh, which Armenia calls a buffer zone or a security zone. These are fair.
Armenian sides say that if they withdraw these 7 regions, it will be the highest danger for Nagorno-Karabakh because Azerbaijani army will stand right on the line with Stepanakert and Nagorno-Karabakh region.
Yeah. Yes, I know. That's exactly what they say. And that's why an important component of the return of the territories. And of course, we would much prefer to have a return of the territories done at the negotiating table rather than through combat. But a necessary component of it would be security guarantees for the residents of Nagorno-Karabakh once Azeri authorities move into those areas. There would have to be some sort of international agreement or international peacekeeping forces to guarantee the peace between Azerbaijan and Nagorno-Karabakh.
Do you see, you just mentioned the meeting with Minister Lavrov. When you worked in the OSCE or just in general, what is your position about Russia's or Kremlin's role in this conflict, and are they really interested to stop it?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. It's interesting. Obviously Russia is not and cannot be any kind of honest broker in areas that it occupies in the former Soviet Union. Of course, that's Georgia and Ukraine. But in the case of Nagorno-Karabakh, they have actually played a productive role, and to a great extent, really starting back in the Obama administration, the United States has been willing to allow Russia to take the lead in hosting talks and in Russia or in Sochi. There's been multiple meetings of the two leaders in Russia with Putin as the host. And that's because Moscow does not want this conflict to turn into an ongoing war between the two countries. It's not in Moscow's interests. It's not an interest in their interests because they want to continue to play the leading role in the South Caucasus, at least in terms of this conflict. And if this is decided by military means, of course, they're going to lose that influence. So that's one thing. Another aspect of it that I found not terribly helpful is, of course, they sell arms to both sides. They basically provide all of the arms to Armenia, and something close to half the arms that Azerbaijan has. So it's interesting. I mean, when I was the co-chair, this was 2012 to 2013, I used to tell people in the State Department, this is a real opportunity for the United States to build a more productive relationship with Russia, because our interests do coincide in this, in the sense that we both agree on the Madrid principles as the way forward. This whole idea of territory for peace and stability.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but would you say, you just said two sides of this productive role, and the second side was about selling arms to both sides and using this conflict as a tool of, I don't know, putting pressure on both sides and having like political influence. So maybe they're not interested in war, but do you believe they're interested to solve this conflict in general?
Well, that's the important question. I fear the answer is no. They don't want a comprehensive solution, and that's because they want this. As I said before, if the conflict is resolved, this lever for influence really goes away for Russia. So I think it's in Russia's interest to just keep the conflict simmering. They don't want it to, blow up into a conflagration, into a big fire, but they want to keep it simmering so they continue to play this central role, which, as I say, the United States, really starting in the Obama administration, decided that they could accept that and even encourage it.
So do I understand right that United States in this specific conflict are not very involved? Because usually I don't see like some huge reactions from Washington, D.C.
No, it's the U.S. role really has been dissipating over the years, and it's now the U.S. role is almost negligible, I would say, which is really a pity, because I think that the U.S. could play a really productive role, and we're not.
Even now, when it's already like commonly well known that Turkey and Russia are having, I don't know, I don't want to say some words, but fight in the region. And they're like fighting for political influence here, especially in Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Even in this situation, U.S. is not trying to be involved, as I see.
Yeah, it's very distressing for me as somebody who believes strongly in a leadership role, and a positive leadership role in conflicts in the Middle East and in the Caucasus and elsewhere. To see us really take a back seat, I think is really quite regrettable.
Do you think that there are some tools in U.S. or maybe in other countries to make both sides sit and negotiate these Madrid principles or other bases for negotiations?
You know, I think it would have to be a multilateral approach. I think I would not argue that the U.S. by itself can force the two sides to stand down. But what I do think is that the U.S. could coordinate with the European Union to try and present an alternative to conflict in terms of developing a more regional approach to the conflict. There are economic levers that aren't being used that should be used. Armenia is in a very difficult position. Its border with Azerbaijan is, of course, closed. Its border with Turkey has been closed for for almost 20 years. Since the conflict first broke out, and also Azerbaijan's territory is split up too. There is an enclave of Azerbaijan called Nakhichevan, which I'm sure you know about, which has no contiguous border with Azerbaijan. So you can see where the big economic powers, the U.S. and the EU, could use their collective power to try and present or try and push the sides to more of a win-win situation rather than this zero-sum situation that both Yerevan and Baku put themselves in. The other
economical projects, regional economical projects, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, agree to open up the borders. Azerbaijan, would have more opportunity to get its oil and gas out. There would be more transportation links. I mean, this is the way to look at the region, not in terms of I will win because I'm going to defeat you. We can both win if we work together. Now, obviously that's a very idealistic way of looking at it. But the U.S. and the EU also have a lot of security that they can provide, or security guarantees that they can provide on the ground in terms of enforcing some kind of agreement and keeping the sides separated with a peacekeeping force.
It's now widely discussed, and it was discussed before the war, that this war started exactly now, also because of U.S. presidential elections and because United States will be busy with some inner problems and won't look at the region. Do you agree on that? And we see that Turkey is really like taking huge part in this conflict, and they're openly supporting Azerbaijan and saying that we will support them with military assistance and etc. etc. So it is some continuation, let's say, of Syria issue, of Lebanon issue, and other countries where Turkey and Russia had like not war but fights between each other. So do you believe that there is some way for United States to look at this issue closer now? And do you agree that this started because of absence of the United States on international area?
Yeah, I think in a large sense, it's been yeah. I think it started because of the absence of the United States to a great degree. Once you have great powers withdraw, you have regional powers that come in to fill the vacuum, and so you have a president in Turkey, Mr. Erdogan, who definitely has kind of neo-Ottoman ambitions, trying to spread influence into Syria, Libya, and then pushing out into the Turkic space. Let's not forget that Azerbaijan is basically they're a Turkic people. Their languages are very similar. So yeah, I think that there was really no restraint on Erdogan to come out and say we will support Azerbaijan to the very end. Until they take, we will support them in taking back Nagorno-Karabakh. Turkey actually is a member of the Minsk group. They're one of the countries of the OSCE that's part of this group that is going to support a negotiation eventually between the two sides in Minsk. That's why it's called the Minsk group. It's just that they're not one of the co-chairs of the group. The three co-chairs, of course, are the U.S., Russia, and France. But I think the real whatever you want to call it, game changer, or the impetus for Baku to make this decision to use military means to take back territory is exactly this idea that Turkey has its back. I think that Turkey before I think was much more restrained. Obviously, they were supportive of Azerbaijan. They have, to put it mildly, very problematic relations with the Armenians and with Armenia. I think that's what changed. I think the whole strategic calculations of Baku. The idea that Turkey's got its back.
Could you please tell me, now it's widely discussed in Armenia, and it was also announced by Prime Minister Pashinyan that they possibly can start some process to define Nagorno-Karabakh as an independent state. Do you believe it will contribute to regional stability and security? And isn't it some kind of an issue that could be related with, I don't know, Crimea, South Ossetia, Abkhazia, and other regions?
I think over the years, Armenia has occasionally threatened to recognize Nagorno-Karabakh as an independent country. They have refrained from doing that because I think that would just be more fuel on the fire. If Armenia closes off the idea of some sort of negotiated solution that would include in some way a role for Azerbaijan, or a role for even some kind of authority over Azerbaijan with real strict security guarantees for the population, which of course is what the Minsk group has been trying to negotiate. If they do recognize Nagorno-Karabakh, I think that would be a signal that they've given up on a negotiated or a solution that's negotiated by the Minsk group. If they did that, it'd be a sign that they were completely rejecting the Madrid principles, and neither side has rejected outright the Madrid principles. There are certain principles that they have not accepted, obviously, but they haven't rejected them. I would be surprised if they recognize the independence of, I mean, de facto, Nagorno-Karabakh is part of Armenia. I'm not saying that the U.S. recognizes it as such. I'm just saying that they already have a lot of contiguous territory, and I'm not sure that they would get anything out of recognizing Nagorno-Karabakh at this point, besides even greater fury and hostility from Baku.
Yeah, but don't you think that if they do it and if they recognize Nagorno-Karabakh, any war started by Azerbaijan in this territory will involve Russia and Russia's military alliances, because it will be already like a contract between Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh as independent states, so-called, and in this situation, Russia will have to involve with military assistance.
Yeah, I think the Russians have been very careful to say that that their collective security agreement with Armenia, the CSTO, would be triggered only if the territory of Armenia was invaded. If it'd be a different thing if they announced that Nagorno-Karabakh was part of Armenia. I mean, I don't know. The Russian response to that would be, our existing treaty is for the existing borders of Armenia, not new borders. I can't see that would that's something that the Armenians would do. I mean, it's different if they say we recognize Nagorno-Karabakh and its present borders as an independent state. That would not necessarily trigger a legal obligation for Russia to come to Nagorno-Karabakh's defense.
Thank you. My last question. Could you please tell me what will be your suggestion now to your colleague in OSCE? What could be done now on behalf of the U.S. co-chair in OSCE?
Well, I think, first of all, this depends, I think, on who's in charge of U.S. foreign policy. I mean, right now we have a foreign policy which is shorthand is America first, and I can't see the present occupant of the White House agreeing to any kind of involvement, peacekeeping involvement, or even diplomatic involvement in a war in a faraway place where the U.S. doesn't have any kind of economic interests. So the ambassador of the OSCE, I think, can only do so much. I would imagine that my successor there, Ambassador Gilmore, is doing everything that he can to support the work of the U.S. Co-chair of the very small monitoring mission on the line of contact that's run by Andrzej Kaspachik. But there's only so much an ambassador can do without having the full support of the commander-in-chief. Right now, he doesn't have it.
Understood. Thanks a lot for the interview.
Thank you, Yegor.